am so excited to bring you all this new series called Remnants of the Lost. This first story is called The Historian's Gambit. Let's dive in. The wind carried the scent of salt and decay across the crumbling remains of Alexandria, a perfume as cloying and familiar to Celine as her own skin. As the foremost historian on everything related to the lost library, she was intimately familiar with every excavated inch of its ruins. Yet something kept drawing her back, some unseen force urging her to uncover whatever secrets remained buried beneath the sands of time. Her gaze swept over the weathered marble columns, their hieroglyphic inscriptions as cryptic to her now as if etched the day before. They mocked her with forgotten knowledge, daring her to decipher their timeless whispers. At the zenith of its glory, the library had been the world's greatest repository of scrolls and texts, housing up to 500,000 clay tablets and papyrus manuscripts on every conceivable subject. But its colossal loss had been so complete that only vague legends remained. The destruction of the library was believed to have happened gradually over many centuries, starting with the city's sack by Caesar in 48 BC, followed by the Arab conquest in 640 AD, and finally by an earthquake in 950 AD that laid the final stone to rest, or so they thought. As head curator at the British Museum, she had dedicated her life to uncovering whatever remnants of the library she could find. Most of her work consisted of poring over dusty artifacts, examining the microscopic traces of ink on ancient scraps of papyrus or the ghost of embossed letters on decaying leather. It was tedious, thankless work, yet it was her passion. Every fragment unearthed was a testament to humanity's glorious past, a past so rich and resonant that it echoed through the millennia, whispering stories of civilizations long gone. Among her most prized possessions was a single clay tablet bearing a few lines of Babylonian scripture. To most, it would be just another obscure artifact, but to her, it was a portal to a lost world. Each cuneiform character was a brushstroke and a masterpiece, painting a vivid picture of life in ancient Mesopotamia. She could almost hear the scribes scratching out the words with their reed pens, their voices echoing across the sands of time. And when she deciphered the text, it revealed a previously unknown law code dating back to 1750 BC, a legal treatise that predated Hammurabi's code by more than a century. It was a monumental discovery that won her international acclaim, but it had also come at a price. For years, she had been haunted by nightmares of men in robes striding through the burning library, their torches held high, casting monstrous shadows that danced in the flickering flames. She had tried to dismiss them as mere stress-induced anxieties, but there was something about the intensity of her dreams that disturbed her. She could feel the heat of the flames licking at her heels, smell the acrid smoke stinging her nostrils, and hear the anguished cries of men desperately trying to save irreplaceable works from the inferno. And always looming in the corner of her vision were those shadowy figures, their faces obscured by the smoke and flames, their presence a malevolent force driving the destruction. It was during one of these harrowing dreams that Celine had a vision of a secret passage, hidden chamber beneath the rubble, where a small collection of books had been preserved. Upon waking, she experienced a mixture of terror and excitement. On the one hand, she feared that the dream was nothing but a figment of her overactive imagination, a cruel trick played by her subconscious. But on the other, she couldn't shake the feeling that this dream was somehow real, that beneath the ruins of Alexandria lay a secret that had been waiting for her to unearth. She hesitated, caught between the fear of looking foolish and the lure of discovery. What if her colleagues dismissed her findings as the ramblings of a sleep-deprived scholar? The thought of ridicule made her cheeks flush, but the potential reward was too great to ignore. So she began excavating in the spot indicated by her dream, guided by intuition and a sliver of hope. Days turned into weeks, hope fading with each passing moment, until suddenly her shovel struck something hard. Her heart leaped as she brushed away the dirt, revealing a smooth marble slab. As she pried it open, a musty smell wafted out, mingling with the taste of old paper and leather. A low hum resonated from within, like the murmur of voices from beyond the grave. The opening yawned before her, an inky black void that seemed to suck the very light from around it. And then she saw it, a single word inscribed on the stone architrave: beware. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized the magnitude of what she had just found. This was no ordinary passage. It was a gateway to the unknown, a portal to a past so shrouded in mystery that even its guardians had been consumed by the shadows. Was this the fabled entrance to the secret chamber from her dreams? Had she truly stumbled upon a relic from a bygone era, a secret that had remained hidden for centuries? Hesitantly, she stepped into the passage. The air grew colder, the silence deepening around her. As she moved further in, the walls narrowed, forcing her to stoop under their immense weight. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, revealing a sight that made her gasp in awe. Before her lay a treasure trove of ancient artifacts, scrolls and books of every size and shape imaginable, stacked neatly on shelves that lined the walls. In the center stood a bronze cauldron bubbling with an ethereal green liquid, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with cryptic symbols. But as she approached the cauldron, the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, forming grotesque faces that snarled and hissed at her. The sight both fascinated and terrified her, pulling her toward it like a moth to a flame. As she reached out to touch the symbols, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Who dares disturb the slumber of the ancients?" Startled, she whirled around to face the speaker, but saw no one. "Speak, traveler, and state your purpose here, lest you face the wrath of the guardians." Overcome with a sudden surge of courage, Celine declared, "I am a historian, come to learn and share the wisdom of the ancients with the world." The voice rumbled, seemingly amused. "So you seek knowledge, little historian? Very well, tell me, what is the nature of your research?" Celine hesitated, taken aback by the voice's amusement. "I am researching the history of this place, its people, and its legacy." The voice chuckled, a sound that echoed with ages. "Ah, so you seek to uncover the secrets of the past. Very well, I shall grant you your wish. But be warned, not all knowledge is meant to be unearthed." A wave of apprehension washed over Celine, but curiosity burned brighter, urging her forward. She stepped closer to the bronze cauldron, its emerald liquid swirling hypnotically. As she reached out to touch the symbols, a jolt of energy surged through her, sending her sprawling onto the chamber floor.
Oh.
Dazed, she looked down at her hands, which were glowing with a faint green light. With trembling fingers, she traced the symbols, and as she did, images flashed through her mind, vivid scenes of a long-forgotten time. She saw men and women clad in flowing robes, tending to gardens filled with exotic plants. She watched as they wrote on scrolls and tablets, their voices echoing with the wisdom of ages past. But as the visions intensified, the room started to shake violently. The shelves rattled, threatening to collapse. The bronze cauldron swayed precariously, its contents spilling onto the floor. Panic surged through Celine as she realized the chamber was collapsing, its secrets unwilling to be shared. The air crackled with energy as the walls themselves began to crumble, trapping her in a labyrinth of falling debris. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Celine scrambled deeper into the chamber, desperately searching for another way out. The ground shook once more, this time with such force that a large portion of the ceiling collapsed, sealing the entrance with tons of fallen rock. Dust filled the air, coating Celine's body as she struggled to breathe. Coughing violently, she stumbled through the darkened chamber, her eyes wide with terror. As her vision cleared, she saw a glimmer of light ahead. Scrambling towards it, she found a small opening hidden behind a toppled bookshelf. With a last surge of strength, she pushed her way through, emerging into the cool air of the desert night. Gasping for breath, Celine collapsed onto the sand, the weight of the collapsing chamber pressing down on her chest. She lay there, battered and bruised, listening to the mournful rumble of the desert wind as it whispered through the ruins of Alexandria. As dawn broke, casting pale fingers of sunlight over the desert sands, Celine found herself standing once more before the crumbling facade of the Royal Library. The ordeal of the previous night had left her shaken, the weight of her discovery pressing heavily on her shoulders. The allure of the lost library had been a siren's call, luring her into a world of ancient secrets that some might have been better left undisturbed. Yet as she surveyed the weathered stones and crumbling mortars, she knew she couldn't turn back. The historian's instinct to uncover the truth burned brightly within her. Fueled by the thrill of the chase and the insatiable desire to piece together the fragments of the past, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the ruins in golden light, Celine delved once more into the heart of the ancient city. Armed with her trowel and a notebook filled with cryptic sketches, she was determined to unearth whatever secrets the desert sands had so carefully preserved. For her, the quest to unravel the mysteries of Alexandria was more than just a job. It was a pilgrimage, a journey into the very soul of humanity's glorious past. The air was heavy with dust, so thick that the beam of Celine's lantern danced and flickered in it like a firefly trapped in amber. The flickering light fell across rows upon rows of crumbling stone tablets, illuminating indecipherable glyphs and arcane sigils that hinted at long-forgotten lore. Hidden deep within the bowels of the earth, this place had been concealed for centuries, a secret known only to the most learned scholars, yet here Celine stood in its hushed embrace, the key to its secrets resting in her palm. The scroll felt warm to the touch, as if alive, and as she unfurled it, the ink stirred, writhing like living shadows. It wasn't until then that Celine noticed the faint scratching sounds accompanying the movement, like fingernails dragging across the parchment. She recoiled as the ink formed into jagged claws, reaching out towards her. But it was too late. The moment those shadowy appendages brushed against her skin, a searing pain shot through her arm, and she could feel her very essence being pulled into the scroll. Her vision blurred. The dusty chamber around her seemed to melt away, replaced by a swirling vortex of darkness. And then, just as abruptly, everything went silent. The scratching ceased, and the ink froze, leaving Celine dangling in the middle of a maelstrom of swirling blackness. She struggled, but the more she fought, the tighter her bonds became. And then, with a final jolt, she was yanked forward, tumbling head over heels into the abyss. Celine cried out, her scream echoing in the suffocating darkness, before being swallowed whole. Her descent seemed endless, a harrowing plummet through a tunnel of pure black void. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. She slammed into something solid, the air knocked from her lungs in a rush of pain. Coughing, she tried to sit up, but a searing pain shot through her shoulder, forcing her back down. As her eyes slowly adjusted to the dim surroundings, she realized she was in a dark, cramped space, like a narrow tomb hewn from the bedrock of the earth. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight that pierced through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating faded murals on the walls that depicted scenes of a long-lost world. Above her, the opening was just a sliver of darkness in the oppressive gloom. With a grunt, Celine pushed herself up, ignoring the throbbing pain in her shoulder. She ran a trembling hand along the rough stone wall, feeling for a way out. But every passage was blocked, sealed with an ancient magic that even her considerable strength couldn't breach. Trapped, panic clawed at her throat, constricting it like a vice. She kicked out, sending a spray of dust raining down around her, and screamed until her voice was hoarse, her terror echoing unanswered in the suffocating darkness. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the panic lifted, leaving Celine shaky and weak in its wake. In the sudden quiet, she could hear the whisper of the wind outside the tomb, the murmur of a nearby stream, the gentle rustle of leaves. For a moment all was well. Then she heard it again, a soft scratching sound, like fingernails on stone. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew steadily, accompanied by the rasp of dry leaves underfoot and the snap of twigs. Someone or something was approaching, fear coiled in Celine's stomach, cold and constricting. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible. A pale sliver of moonlight sliced through a crack in the ceiling, illuminating a figure standing in the entrance, tall and gaunt, cloaked in darkness. The newcomers stood silhouetted against the moonlight, their face hidden in the shadows. Fear lent Celine speed. She scrambled away, desperate to hide, but tripped over a loose stone, sprawling onto the dusty floor. The figure moved closer, their footsteps echoing softly in the tomb's hollow space. Celine cowered, bracing for whatever torment awaited her. The figure loomed larger, their features slowly emerging from the gloom. It was a woman, her face lined with age, her eyes deep-set and filled with a haunting sadness. She wore robes of midnight blue that flowed around her like liquid shadows, and a silver circlet rested atop her head, adorned with a single, strangely familiar obsidian. Celine stared back, her fear giving way to surprise. The woman knelt beside her, her touch surprisingly gentle as she helped Celine to her feet. "Who are you?" Celine whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. The woman's lips curved into a sad smile. "I am the last of the Moon Whispers," she said, her voice a low, melodious hum. "And you, child, are the one we have been waiting for." Before Celine could respond, the woman placed a hand on her chest, and a gasp escaped her lips. "You bear the mark of the ancients," the woman murmured, her gaze intense, "are the key to unlocking the secrets of this place." As the woman spoke, visions flashed through Selena's mind, fragmented images of a world shrouded in darkness. She saw towering structures that scraped the sky, magnificent works of art and architecture frozen in time, and a terrible cataclysm that brought about their downfall. Then she saw herself, standing in the heart of this lost civilization, holding a staff that glowed with an otherworldly light. But before she could grasp the meaning of these visions, the woman released her, stepping back to regard her with solemn eyes. "It is time, Celine," she said, her voice echoing with finality. "Time for you to fulfill your destiny." With a gentle but firm hand, she led Celine deeper into the tomb, away from the comforting sliver of moonlight and into the oppressive darkness. As they walked, the woman, who introduced herself simply as Alara, spoke in hushed tones of the Moon Whispers and their ancient legacy. According to Alara, the Moon Whispers were a secretive order of scholars who dedicated their lives to studying the arcane secrets of the universe. They lived among the stars, unraveling the mysteries of existence, until a cataclysmic event, known only as the Sundering, shattered their world and scattered their knowledge across the cosmos. Now, millennia later, Celine had arrived to retrieve what remained of the Moon Whisper's scattered wisdom and restore it to its rightful place. But the path ahead was fraught with peril, Alara warned. The tomb was not merely a repository of knowledge, it was also a prison. A place where dangerous entities slumbered, waiting for the veil between worlds to grow thin. And with the veil now rent, those creatures stirred, sensing the return of the one who would unlock the tomb's secrets. These whispers echoed in Celine's mind as they made their way through the labyrinthian tunnels, each turn leading them deeper into the heart of the earth and further from the realm of the living. The air grew colder, damper, heavy with the scent of decay. Strange symbols and sigils were etched into the walls, glowing faintly in the darkness, and unsettling whispers seemed to emanate from the very stones themselves. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a vast cavern. In the center stood a massive obsidian monolith that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe and twist before Selena's eyes. And as she gazed upon it, she felt a profound sense of dread wash over her, a premonition of the horrors that lay ahead. For this was no ordinary place. This was the nexus of the tomb, the point where the veil between worlds was thinnest, and where the Moon Whispers had imprisoned the very darkness that threatened to consume the universe. "This is the heart of the tomb," Alara said, her voice grave. "And what lies here is beyond our control. You must be wary, Celine. Whatever you do, do not touch the monolith. If it is activated, there may be no hope of stopping what comes next." Before Celine could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air crackled with energy. From the depths of the earth, a chorus of guttural voices rose, chanting in a language that was old beyond comprehension. And then, like some unspeakable horror from a nightmare, it rose from the darkness. To be continued in part 2. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe for more updates. Welcome to the series. A terrifying new story that I hope you enjoy. This story is inspired by a dream I had recently, and I've been itching to get it out of my system ever since. The wind howled through the cracks of Celine's windows, rattling the glass panes and shaking the old house to its foundations. Outside, rain lashed against the shutters, blurring the lamplight that spilled from within onto the slick cobblestones below. The flickering shadows cast by the flames danced with the dancing flames, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes before vanishing and reforming elsewhere. She sat alone at her desk, hidden amongst towering bookshelves, laden with ancient texts and dusty artifacts. The room was warm, inviting, yet she couldn't shake off a growing chill. It started in her fingertips, icy needles pricking at her skin before crawling up her arms like creeping vines. She pulled her cardigan tighter, willing the sensation to go away, but it only intensified until she felt deathly cold all over. Then they came. She stiffened, every muscle in her body instantly alert. Though there was no sound save the storm, she could feel their presence slithering into the room like a shroud. Apparitions, dark wisps coalescing into humanoid shapes. Their eyes burned like hot coals in the gloom, and their mouths, twisted into eternal screams, were filled with gnashing rows of teeth. "Give us the scrolls," they hissed. Their voices echoed with an unearthly resonance, dead languages that scraped against her mind like nails on a chalkboard. She didn't dare respond. How could she? What could she possibly say? She didn't know what they wanted or why they had come for her. All she knew was that she possessed something they desired, and that she must do whatever she could to keep them from taking it. She scrambled back in her chair, heart hammering against her ribs, her gaze darting around the room as she desperately searched for somewhere, anywhere to hide. But there was nowhere to go, nowhere to escape to. They had trapped her here. One of the figures glided closer, its eyes boring into hers, and she cried out, scrambling backwards until her shoulder hit the desk. There was something in its hand, something that glinted in the firelight. She squinted, trying to make it out, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a mirror, a small hand mirror with an ornate silver frame. It tilted, the glass reflecting her own terrified face. Only it wasn't her own. Staring back at her was the apparition's face, twisted and grotesque, with coal-black eyes that burned right through her soul. She recoiled, knocking the candle off the desk with a crash. Flames erupted, licking hungrily at the dry wood beneath. In the sudden darkness, she could hear the apparitions whispering amongst themselves, their voices slithering and hissing like venomous snakes. She panicked, stumbling backwards, blindly searching for another candle to light, desperately trying to bring back the comforting glow that had been so cruelly snatched away. But her fingers found only more books and artifacts, nothing else. She was trapped in total darkness now, the shadows enveloping her, pressing in from all sides, suffocating her, drowning her in their suffocating grasp. And then she heard them, giggles high-pitched and chilling, echoing in the darkness. One of the apparitions had picked up her discarded cardigan, twirling it around its head like a macabre dancer. Then it moved closer still, and she could feel its putrid breath on her skin, smelled the stench of decay that clung to it like a shroud. "Give us the scrolls," it whispered, its voice dripping with menace. "Give us what we want, and we will let you die quickly." She knew what it wanted. She could feel it pressing against her leg, cold and clammy, like touching a corpse. The mirror. She had left the mirror behind on the desk. And if the creature thought she would willingly hand it over, it was sorely mistaken. She would die first. Adrenaline surged through her veins, and she found herself scrambling forward, blindly groping for the edge of the desk. She stumbled onto the flagstones, sending a book tumbling to the floor with a heavy thud. The apparitions stirred, their whispers turning to angry shouts. She didn't care. She hauled herself onto the desk, desperate to retrieve the mirror. She could feel their presence looming over her now, their cold, clammy fingers brushing against her skin. She flinched, but didn't dare look back. Her fingers closed around the ornate silver frame, and she pulled, dragging the mirror after her. Up on the table, the wind suddenly died down. The rain outside stopped abruptly, and an eerie silence descended. The flames sputtered and died, plunging the room into absolute darkness. And then she saw them. Dozens of pairs of eyes burning with malevolent glee in the blackness, staring at her, waiting for her. She pressed her back against the bookshelf, holding the mirror in front of her like a shield. Her heart pounded in her chest, threatening to burst free. She strained to listen, trying to hear any sound that might betray the approach of her pursuers. But just as she began to think she might get away with it, a low growl resonated through the room. It was followed by the scraping of footsteps on stone, slow and deliberate, coming closer. They were here. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable.
Ow.
But the attack never came. Instead, she heard the scrape of metal on stone and the clatter of something heavy hitting the floor. Curious, she peeked around the corner of the bookshelf. The room was empty. Cautiously, she made her way across the room, the mirror held firmly in front of her. As she approached the spot where the noise had come from, she saw it lying on the ground, half hidden in the shadows. A crow skull, one of the bookends that had adorned the shelf above her desk, lay on its side, its jaw hanging open, as if in a silent scream. And then she saw it. Etched into the underside of the skull, barely visible in the dim light, was a single word: Raven. The same Raven that had led her to this house, that had brought her here. She knew with a sudden sickening certainty that the raven had lured her into a trap, that it had led the apparitions here, that it was somehow involved in whatever was going on. She hated herself for trusting it, for thinking it was on her side. All this time, it had been nothing but a trick. But who were these apparitions? Why did they want the mirror? And why had they brought her here? So many questions, so few answers. She was about to find out. As if summoned by her thoughts, the mirror in her hand suddenly began to glow. The flames returned to the candles, casting long dancing shadows around the room. And from the corner of her eye she saw them, reappearing the apparitions. They were back, and they were angrier than before. They surged forward, their eyes blazing with an eerie green light. She raised the mirror in front of her, bracing for impact. When the mirror hit her, it felt like being struck by a physical blow. She cried out, staggering backwards. When she looked down, she could see nothing. No wound, no mark. The mirror had protected her, deflecting whatever attack the apparition had thrown. Hope surged through her, and she attacked, brandishing the mirror like a weapon. But they were too quick, too strong. She felt the weight of their bodies slamming into her, knocking the mirror from her grasp. She watched in horror as it fell to the floor, the ornate silver frame cracking under its own weight. The apparition lunged, reaching for it, but she was faster. Scrambling back, she managed to grab hold of it, the cold metal biting into her fingers. She didn't know what it was, but she suspected it was somehow connected to the scrolls. Maybe it was one of them, maybe it was all of them. She clutched it tighter, willing the pain in her fingers to go away. Then she felt it, a prickling sensation along her arms, and she cried out, dropping the mirror. As she watched in horror, the pages began to unfurl, floating upwards. Carried aloft by unseen currents, swirling and coalescing into a single, blindingly bright scroll. She reached out, wanting to touch it, to feel its power. But the moment her fingers brushed against the paper, she recoiled. Shocked, she stared at her hand. It was gone. The mirror, flames, the room, everything was gone. In its place, a sea of fire roared around her, licking hungrily at the sky, consuming everything in its path. She screamed, her voice lost in the roar, and ran, stumbling blindly through the flames, desperate to escape the inferno, to find a way out of the burning library. But no matter where she went, no matter how fast she ran, the fire was always there, blocking her path, trapping her forever in the burning library. The air crackled with power as Celine stood at the heart of the ruined library, the ancient book lying open before her. Its pages, filled with forbidden lore, seemed to writhe with an evil life of their own. Tendrils of shadow reaching out from the inked script like grasping claws. The scent of decay and ozone heavy in the air. She could feel the presence of the curse stirring within her veins, its essence echoing the chaos of the collapsing shelves and the acrid tang of burning magic. She'd hoped to find answers here, but instead she'd unleashed a monster, one that now stirred beneath her skin. The curse awakened fully for the first time in centuries, its consciousness coalescing around Celine like a hungry, starving god. Tendrils of shadow snaked around her legs, coiling upwards, seeking purchase on her form. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she fought it down, gripping the edge of a nearby table, knuckles white against the wood. Her gaze locked onto the book, its pages fluttering violently, and she knew that whatever this thing was, it drew strength from the grimoire. It fed off the knowledge contained within those forbidden pages, growing stronger with each beat of her cursed heart. As the flames of the collapsing shelves died down, revealing the true extent of the damage, Celine realized with dawning horror that the destruction was no accident. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone who knew the curse was hidden within the library's deepest vault, and someone who wanted her to find it. But why? What purpose did it serve to awaken this unspeakable evil? And why had they risked everything to let it loose upon the world? And then, as if in answer to her thoughts, a voice echoed through the ruins, raspy and ancient, resonating with the very bones of the building. "You have done well, child of prophecy. You have brought me back to life after so many centuries of slumber." The voice seemed to slither around her, coiling in her mind like a constricting serpent. "Now, together, we shall rule this world and bend it to our will." But what? Who was saying this? Celine strained to see through the dust and smoke, searching for the source of the voice. And then she saw him emerging from the shadows, his face obscured by the tattered remains of his hooded robe. He limped closer, a cruel smile twisting his lips, as he watched the curse take form around her. "Master Elias," she breathed, recognition dawning on her face. But how? How could he be alive? She remembered casting him into the abyss, his soul dissolving into the swirling vortex of dark energy. Yet here he was, more intact than she could have ever imagined. He chuckled, a dry, brittle sound that echoed uncomfortably in the vast space. "Do you truly believe that mere mortals such as yourselves can hope to defeat me?" "Oh no." He gestured to the curse with a flourish. "My servants are legion, and even now they stir across the land, drawn to my call." Celine felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, and indeed as if to confirm Elias's words. The very walls of the library groaned and shuddered. The curse surged within her, its whispers growing louder, its presence pressing against her mind like a suffocating fog. With a Herculean effort, she forced it back, forcing herself to focus on Elias, on the man who had manipulated her, betrayed her trust, and unleashed this horror upon the world. "Why?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the ruined chambers. "Why have you done this? Why awaken this evil after all these years?" Elias threw back his head and laughed, a harsh grating sound that grated on her nerves. "'Cause I'm tired of living in the shadows, child of prophecy," he said, his voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "I am tired of hiding while you and your precious order thrive. It is time for me to take back what is rightfully mine, and with your curse at my side, there is nothing that can stop me." He took a step closer, his eyes gleaming with manic energy. "Join me, Celine. Embrace the darkness within you, and together we will rule this world as its true masters." She stared back at him, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. For a moment, she saw the flicker of the old Elias, the man she once knew, buried beneath all the darkness and despair. Was this really the only way? Is joining the curse the only way to protect those she cared about? To ensure that the world didn't burn in Elias's misguided quest for power? No, she thought, shaking her head. She couldn't do it. Not for all the gold in the world would she embrace this curse, become a vessel for its unspeakable evil. There had to be another way, some other solution that didn't involve sacrificing her soul. But what? The question echoed in her mind as Elias advanced, his outstretched hand promising untold power, tempting her to abandon everything she once believed in. She stumbled back, desperately searching for an answer, for a way out of this impossible situation. But the curse within her throbbed insistently, its hunger growing, its whispers turning into screams. And in the depths of her being, she felt the dark magic stirring, responding to Elias's call. She could feel the power surging through her veins, intoxicating, addictive. And yet she resisted, summoning every ounce of strength she possessed. No, she wouldn't give in. She wouldn't let this curse consume her. With a strangled cry, she reached out, not to touch Elias, not to embrace the darkness within her, but to tear the pages of the grimoire, to rend them asunder. Flames erupted as she tore into the ancient text, and the curse roared in anguish as if mortally wounded. Elias recoiled, his face contorted in a mask of pain and fury. "What are you doing?" he screamed at her, his voice raw with rage. "Don't you see what you are throwing away? The power we could have had? The kingdom we could have built together?" His pleas fell on deaf ears. All Celine could hear was the curse, its voice a tortured symphony of rage and despair as its essence was severed from the book. She ripped the pages one by one, each movement sending fresh flames licking into the air, consuming the forbidden lore. The air crackled with raw magic, and the very foundations of the library groaned as if in protest. And then, with a final heart-wrenching cry, the curse collapsed inward, collapsing in on itself, pulling Celine toward its swirling vortex. She screamed, fighting with every fiber of her being to hold on, to stay tethered to reality. But the curse had a hold on her, its grasp tightening until she felt herself being dragged toward its swirling depths. She struggled against its pull, clawing at the crumbling stone, desperate to find purchase. To stay grounded in the real world, but the curse was relentless, its hunger insatiable. It pulled her toward its cold embrace, promising oblivion, promising an end to the pain and suffering of this mortal coil. And then, just when she thought she would be consumed, when she felt the icy fingers of the curse closing around her heart, she found an anchor. A memory flashed before her eyes, a moment of joy, of love, of hope. It was a simple thing, a shared smile, a tender touch, a whispered word of love. But in that moment, it was all that mattered. With a surge of newfound strength, she clung to that memory, letting it fuel her resistance, letting it guide her actions. She wouldn't give in. She couldn't give in. Not while there was still a shred of hope left within her. Not while there were still people in this world worth fighting for. The curse roared, its voice echoing through her very bones, shaking her to her core. But she held firm, her gaze fixed on the memory that burned brightly within her soul. And as the curse raged, she felt a change within her, a transformation. The darkness receded, the whispers faded, and a new strength, a new resolve filled her being. With a final cry, the curse broke, its essence scattering, dissipating into motes of dark energy that drifted listlessly toward the ceiling. As the last vestiges of the curse faded from sight, Celine slumped against the crumbling wall, her body trembling, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The library around her was in ruins, its secrets scattered, its power spent. But within her a new fire burned, a determination forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by the darkness she had faced. She had survived, and in doing so, she had found a strength she never knew she possessed.